This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those that love to make and drink great beer. Learn more online or subscribe at beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew. Welcome to the Craft Beer and Brewing Podcast. I'm your host, co-founder and editorial director of Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine, Jamie Bogner. My guest on the podcast today is joining me from Greenville, South Carolina, Shawn Johnson of Birds Fly South. Welcome to the podcast, Shawn.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me here, Jamie. I'm a big fan of the podcast and, of course, everything you guys do. So I'm super excited to be here. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate it. You know, it was Stan Hieronymus who put you on our radar back, I guess it was 2017, in our Best of Beer, and kind of name-checked Birds Fly South. And that was the, oh wait, we gotta, who is this, what's this small brewery in South Carolina doing down there? And it kind of kick-started things. We got in touch, and I remember you came out to one of our brewery accelerator events up in Asheville and sat in on a panel, and it's been fun to watch your brewery continue to develop, and beers, of course, guys have sent to us have certainly rocked some of our judges' worlds here and there. I really loved that red wine barrel-aged Empress Rising barrel-aged stout for last stout issue. In fact, when I was mentioning this to Joe, he was like, yeah, I still remembered that beer, and now it stood out to him. So anyway, can't wait to talk to you about brewing. I know we're going to talk about some farmhouse beers and funky beers and mixed culture fermentation and a whole bunch of other things along the way. But first, nearly 2,000 breweries across the U.S., Canada, and Mexico partner with G&D Chillers. Innovative modular designs and no proprietary parts propel G&D ahead as the premier choice for your glycol chilling needs. Breweries you recognize like Russian River and Ninkasi, Jack's Abbey, Samuel Adams, and a bunch more breweries you've heard on this very podcast all trust G&D to chill the beer you love. Call G&D Chillers to discuss your project today or reach out directly at gdchillers.com. Also, this podcast is brought to you by RAR North Star Pils, a new base malt to set your compass by. RAR North Star Pils is crafted for brewers looking for a domestic Pilsner malt with low color and low modification. North Star Pils carries overtones of honey and sweetbread, supported by flavors and aromas of hay and nutty character, suitable for any beer style, but particularly craft brewed versions of classic lagers. Let RAR North Star Pils guide your craft by visiting bsgcraftbrewing.com or contact them at 1-800-374-2739. Before we jump into this episode, just want to say a few things. Happy Hanukkah to those that are celebrating over the next few days. Also, if you haven't and you are out there in the world of brewing, contact your local elected officials and demand support for the hospitality industry. There are so many small brewing and hospitality businesses right now that are suffering through these shutdowns, completely necessary shutdowns for public health. But the one thing that we need to do collectively all together is get in touch with our elected officials and ask them to do what they need to do to support these businesses, help these small entrepreneurs survive through these necessary shutdowns. So do it. If you haven't done it yet, you can listen to the episode of the podcast I did with Julie Verratti, who kind of gives you a playbook for how to interact with your local elected officials. It's incredibly important. If you're a consumer listening to this, get out there, support those local businesses that you want to survive. If you don't spend your money there, they will not make it through. So I've been trying to spend until it hurts, eating out and dining, getting takeout as much as I possibly can, stopping by local breweries and buying some crowlers, buying some six packs to go. It is that kind of support for those small local breweries that is going to make the difference for them. So off of my soapbox, Shawn, welcome to the podcast again.
Yeah, no, that's a great soapbox to be on. It's very true right now for everybody. So that's great. And a lot of brewers guilds have links as well to be able to reach out to your officials as well to talk about continuing our tax breaks and other things like that can help us further on too. But no, it's all good.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Hi.
So how are things in South Carolina? And then why don't you also walk us through some of your brewing history?
Yeah. All right. So Greenville here in South Carolina in general, still under the reduced capacity rates, and we have a curfew in effect as well. I think it's 11 o'clock right now. And then just business is just an interesting model right now. A lot of more distribution than we ever thought we would be doing at this time in our period in our life. Tap room is just slowish. It's a comfortable type of thing. We have a large beer garden, which helps people feel a little more relaxed. But getting into the cooler months now, it's going to slow down a little bit. And yeah, other than that, I mean, South Carolina.
They're sensitive to cool down there in South Carolina. It's funny. I'm out here in Colorado. It's been in the 30s this week, and people are in full coats, sitting in front of fire pits outdoors on patios because they're a hardy bunch, and they're gonna drink some beer together no matter what. But when it gets cold in the South, it affects people.
Cold in the South is under 60. Pretty much everything changes once it hits about 55, and we've been touching the 30s here for about the past week.
Oh wow.
And most people just stay in their pajamas in their house is pretty much what happens around here.
I grew up in Central Florida, and when it gets down to anything under 70, mom's got a fire in the fireplace.
My wife's from Florida, and that's a joke of ours. She's under 70, she's freezing.
Yeah. So talk to me about your brewing history. How'd you get into this, and what did that arc look like for you?
So beer fan, beer drinker. That's pretty much how all of us get into it. You read a story that making your own homebrew was cheaper than buying it, and so I was like, this is what I want to do. So I started trying to make beer, and my very first beer I ever did was like an American Pale Ale. Didn't know anything I was doing. Oxidized and just horrible. And so my first beer sucked. It really did. It was terrible. But I got lucky. It was in Florida, and Bob Sylvester, Saint Somewhere, had this thing you could volunteer to go bottle beer. And I was like, man, this sounds really, really interesting and cool. And I reached out to get on the list, and nothing happened. And I had drank a beer, a Saison Athene, and I was like, man, this is beer. Like I'm in love with this style of beer, these flavors, these kinds of things. Got lucky enough to run across him at a beer festival. Of course, it was at the end of the beer festival when I'm a little more gabby and than I needed to be. And
you built up some liquid courage.
Oh, tons of it, yeah. And so I started talking to him and just talking his ear off and all kinds of things. And walked away. My wife was like, he's never going to reach out to you. You're just over the top. And I was like, oh, but I'm a fan. Like he's going to do it. He's going to do it. So I started emailing him, and I would email him like, hey, just reconnecting with you. Just, you talked about maybe me coming and brewing a beer with you, this kind of stuff. Never replied. And so I started getting more creative. I started writing like short story emails, like narratives, and just being as silly as I possibly could. And then finally he replied back, and he was like, I start at 6. Is that too early for you, or something like that? And I was in the Coast Guard for 22 years. So I was like, 6 o'clock, dude, I've already run 3 miles. And how do you want your coffee, dude? So that's how it started. And I showed up every single morning. He couldn't get rid of me. He nicknamed me Alcots, OWCOTS, one who comes on too strong. And I apprenticed with him for 2 years, making beer and learning farmhouse style with him, and just a world of beer as well. The dude is super smart about beer in general, not just that style, but everything. That was a good couple of years. And then the Coast Guard moved us to Washington, D.C. area to take a desk job there, and kind of got involved with some people up there, just trying to find some more brewing gigs and whatever I could do. Latched on to a company, Fairwinds Brewing Company, that opened in Thornton, Virginia. So I was able to kind of help run their pilot system with a gentleman named Todd Parker back then. Get their pilot brews kind of established, work on the contract stuff, and kind of get that brewery up and running. It's a larger 30-barrel IPA Kolsch kind of style brewery. So help get that going. And then moved here to Greenville, getting the Coast Guard, moving us down here. And was like, man, I want to try this little side project, barrel project thing. Scratched up enough change and went over to Thomas Creek, locally here. Been 25 years now, I think. Talked to Tom Davis there, and he was pretty sketched about me bringing in some wild stuff into his big clean house brewery. But finally built his confidence in me, and ran me through the gamut, made me brew on his system and just do all kinds of stuff to prove I wasn't just talking shit. And then he's like, here you go. You could have this section here. You buy all your stuff. You can run Birds Fly South out of here. And so we started barrel aging at that point, about a year long. My first brews were all going into our barrel program. And it was about a year later, my wife was like, "So when does this thing actually start making money?" like,
Right.
yes, she's like, "You have way more patience on the slow beer thing than I have right now with our checkbook." So yeah, we started just putting out beer there. It worked, it went well. So then we built our brick and mortar here, and we're in year 5 in our Hampton Station location here.
Now, with the brewery, as you kind of expanded and went taproom focused, you've taken a broader path than style wise and kind of stretched out a bit beyond those, or sorry, in addition to those kind of farmhouse and funky roots.
Yeah. Yeah, we're still doing probably about 27-ish, 30% of our production is still on the like full mixed culture, Brett focused, funk focused beers.
Yeah.
That's not including like sours and fruited sour type stuff, but Brett focused, we're still running close to 30%. But yeah, we had to. When the bottles in general died across America, it really,
Right.
really took a hit on our plan for sure. But
Well,
yeah,
if you're a hospitality focused business, you want to invite people to come and drink beer with you. You want to make sure that there's a variety of styles that they can enjoy, and especially a place like South Carolina, not necessarily known for a hardcore farmhouse funky beer audience, or at least not an inbuilt one. Talk to me a little bit about uh, being a force for education in that kind of style in your local marketplace.
yeah, that was definitely step one that we had to learn really quickly was the things we were trying to produce and put out there. It was a very niche market. It still relatively is, in comparison to the broader styles, but it was far out there. I mean, this is light lager world. In general, IPA of course is always going to be reign supreme, be king anywhere. But
Right.
they're very light beer focused, very light, style focus, and craft beer and everything was pretty, Blue Moon and your larger brands, New
Sure.
Belgium, Sierra Nevada. Yeah, so that was a big thing.
And that's
for
not a knock on anywhere in the
Oh,
South. Like
no,
that's what beer drinkers have been everywhere in the country, and it's been up to craft brewers to kind of spread that gospel to them.
100%. Yeah, yeah. No, and I mean, as we all know, I enjoy a light lager just as much as the next guy. But
If you're a brewer, you
yeah,
definitely do.
yeah, yeah. So that's just very, it's just the facts of where we were at.
Right.
So yeah, the beginning of this all was a lot of pavement pounding, a lot of hand sells for a couple of years, trying to get our product and explore the flavors with people, really put across our kind of some of our mantras and mottos we have here about being experiential products, experiential beers, like remembering a beer, finding new flavors, that kind of stuff. A lot of education, even through the hands of our distributor to some degree too, of some of the products we were trying to make at the time. My sales guy came on pretty much a year after we started. So he's been with us like 4 years now, and he's been great about it. He's worked larger markets and really good about trying to get that message across to everybody, but he's a big part of it.
And you have done some of that, found strategic distribution partners, in some out-of-state areas where there are larger metro areas and, potentially more drinkers for the kind of niche styles that you make. That's a little bit of a different strategy compared to a lot of breweries these days that are just keeping it, in their immediate tap room and special types of releases like that. But I guess you knew that you needed to find people that could, that would, the larger audience that could also be into what you do.
Yeah. So I always kind of grew up and just getting into the business side of stuff, also kind of the distribution kind of models of like shallow, wide, deep and narrow type of stuff. And knowing your market and knowing what you're capable of doing at home really drives kind of where you should be thinking about your product. And South Carolina, Greenville in general didn't have many like tap room type environments. So when we opened ours up, there were some involved, but it wasn't like we kind of did it a little differently. And so that was a big step for us too in terms of education. We had a place that people wanted to come and try to learn about these products. But the distribution side, the market with here is pretty narrow and deep, and really focus like
Right.
on lagers and IPAs and things like that. So yeah, shallow and wide. Reached out to the people in the markets up north or wherever we could run our beer at, and people that probably could understand it a little better, and started just gaining momentum on that side that way. So we kind of run really two businesses here completely. We have two separate brew houses as well, and so the front is a shallow wide distribution model, and those beers go as far as Taiwan.
Wow.
Palace of Beer to Taiwan. They like funky beer over there. And the front and the back space here is pretty much South Carolina, North Carolina focused.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of those specific beers, but before we do that, tired of trial and error carbonation processes? Then look at Quantaperm's innovative automated carbonation systems for precise carbonation. These systems handle wide flow ranges to accommodate all your beer, wine, soda, or cider styles. You can even carbonate and directly send the products to a packaging line without tankage. Besides carbonation, Quantaperm offers robust and economical systems for nitrogenation and water deoxygenation. All of their systems have an easy-to-use graphical user interface with reports and graphs that you can pull up on your mobile device. Visit Quantaperm for more information. Also, Grandstand is your source for the latest trends in custom-printed drinkware, apparel, and promotional items. They make your job easy by serving as your one-stop shop for everything. Visit eGrandstand/lookbook to see what's trending. That word deoxygenation it gets me every single time.
Yeah, that's a lot of letters for sure.
Oh. So let's talk about farmhouse beers. Obviously, you got your start in kind of professional brewing, apprenticing with Bob Sylvester at Saint Somewhere. Bob was pioneer in that kind of style, starting out in the mid 2000s, 2005, 2006 kind of era, when most folks in the United States hadn't even heard the word saison, much less were interested in brewing with Brettanomyces. And so that's clearly a formative experience for you. Talk to me about as you were thinking about wanting to make these beers and do it in a kind of commercial space. How'd you conceive of what you were going to do that was going to make it something that was worth building a business around? I think it's one thing to enjoy these beers, but it's also, as a creative person, you also have to think, I want to make something that's also going to earn its place in the world. And so as you were trying to think about that from a creative standpoint, how'd you start honing that creative vision for the farmhouse beers that you're going to make?
Yeah, so we first started out, we were pretty much trying making farmhouse style beers based off of Bob's kind of model.
Right.
Red wine, open top fermenters, flat dish bottom style. And they were fine. They were expressive and good. And then I started thinking about kind of running different tangents. So we started using boutique hops, higher hopping rates on our saisons. So they're a little more like a Brett pale ale almost is kind of where they come across now. Some of these are teetering on that line.
Yeah.
And then Solera. So we started using, puncheons, and this like 5 years ago, we drilled holes and we made big valve settings on our puncheon racks, and we ran each brand into those for a while. And then we just continuously are cycling around. So they get wood aging. There's literally a 5-year-old culture that develops brand new eyes and rustic Sunday separately now. Then we just do fresh batches and we just keep going back and forth. And the idea was,
so you've got those puncheons set up in an almost union system then, so that they, okay, that's cool.
And so we started, so again, labors of love, but we started running them around like this, and just the flavors became more solid. The beers are finishing a lot quicker and developing our flavor profile, going in the package as a fresh beer. Very happy with the level of funk we were getting at that time. Acidity does take a while to develop in the bottle, but it was just I came in one day at Thomas Creek, and Brett, who's my head brewer here now, he was working there, and I was like, dude, I got this idea. I had this crazy dream, and it was Ron Jeffries in my dream, and said, no, the beer has to keep moving. You got to, it's just stuff like that. And I don't even know his process, but I was like, that's it. That's what we're going to do. So we came in, just revamped the whole process, mind mapped it, just did all that stuff. And we still do it to this day. And that's kind of, I guess, where we were taken as a creative thing, trying to develop a expressive, like a true house kind of flavor as well. That's where it comes from. And just kind of pushing ourselves in that direction. And then hopping rates. I mean, we do New England grist. We only do like one hazy a quarter, like clean beer, but we do that with our farmhouse and funk beers now. So they're basically huge New England hopped Brett beers now that we're putting out, things like that. Just kind of always trying to see how we can meld the two worlds together and like the current trends with kind of our old world kind of thought process on flavors we want.
Sure. Let's. I'm want to stay on this kind of Solera method. So you're using puncheons, or there's like 500 liter puncheons, and what does the kind of architecture between them look like? Are you using fooders also, or is and I'm curious what the difference would be, because I mean, obviously, from a larger vessel like a fooder, you can Solera it by drawing stuff off, pushing new beer in on top of the old beer, and it's a relatively simple process and straightforward in that way. From thinking about this kind of puncheon system versus kind of Solera, what from a brewing perspective are the differences of these?
Yeah, so I mean, it's pretty much a hybrid of both. Is kind of what we do.
Okay.
We do run our fooders, same process, draw some off, retop it off continuously. The puncheons will actually pool, so we'll brew a fresh batch of, say, brand new ice. We'll put that into our open fermenter. We pitched our bird yeast on it, which is our like house culture it literally has never died. We put that in there. It begins fermentation. And then we pretty much draw from oldest stock puncheon. And then we top off the newer puncheon into the top of that. Then we're fermenting old stock with the fresh brand new one. And then when we're done fermenting, we actually draw that back out and top off the older puncheon that we pulled from. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a double pull system is what we do. They're not permanently connected to each other or anything. But
Okay.
yeah, so we're just kind of racking between old stock to new stock to the freshest stock and then putting it back on.
And I guess that gives you a bit of a fail safe in case anything horrible happens along the way.
Yeah, it's just protected the whole time. Yeah, we can sense something or taste something well before we begin using it.
Yeah. Has that ever happened to you? I mean, I know talking to Kreider out at Second Shift, they had a moment where after years of the culture just like, performing to a T, it just stopped. And they had to figure out and lost barrels and had to figure out how to restart it and get back to where they were, and that's certainly the kind of nightmare scenario that keeps mixed fermentation brewers up at night. Have you ever had something like that happen to you?
Yeah, we've had like our culture stall out.
Yeah,
it just ends at like say 4 Plato or something, and we'll mess with it, try to get it restarted or re-kicking, and if it stays there, we'll use some of our other barrels that have solid fermentation profiles, and we'll actually just go ahead and move that beer to a tote to make a fruited Brett beer of some kind, and then move that beer into those barrels to help the culture kind of establish itself. And most of the time it finishes out pretty close to the original brand. Sometimes we have to like readjust it, but then we'll harvest kind of from that section of barrels, and then use that as we go further.
What was the origin of this culture, and how'd you go about building and developing it, and then honing it into a flavor that you enjoyed? I know that there's two different mindsets on this. There is we're going to make it with this culture, and it's going to be what it's going to be. But then there's also this needs to hit a flavor profile that people will enjoy drinking. And so we want to massage it towards that and kind of select it towards that. Talk to me a little bit about that development process with your culture.
Yeah, so the original bird kind of traveled with me everywhere from Florida, some other projects up in the DC area, and then down to Greenville.
The original bird.
Yeah.
I got to give you credit for staying on brand on this.
Yeah. Well, it was at the time.
You've got a great hook on this.
Yeah. At the time, it was actually beast mode for Marshawn Lynch is when I started it.
Okay.
But, we still have original Carboy in the brewery that still has some of the culture we'll do like side projects with, and it still is Sharpie markered across it beast mode. So that was the original name of the Brett Saison blend that I had that was just chewing through everything. I was like, it's like Marshawn Lynch. So, and I'm a Seattle boy, so, Seahawks fan. So that's where it comes from. But, we traveled around and just different projects or fermentations that I was doing as a home brewer or with Bob or something that I was really proud of or excited for. I would just add that into my culture and then keep on producing stuff and then find the right blends of Brett and Saison that I wanted ratio wise. Got into microscoping and all that fun lab stuff. And then we get
what
here.
What does that mean? Are you in terms of the right ratio between, you're talking about between kind of Sacch yeast, on that kind of Saison strain side, and the number of Brett cells? How do you select for that as you are throwing that under a microscope and then kind of pitching and pushing that forward?
Yeah, so we don't do that. We don't microscope anymore because now what we do now
you got it. You're happy with it.
We have three brinks of the bird going at all times.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we're just continually populating each other. As one gets a little more Brett forward, we'll actually blend that into the other brinks and kind of keep our balance that way now. Yeah. Oh no, I don't have time anymore to do that. There's no point.
But back in the day, how did you do that? I mean, were you just deciding like this sample that I've got here has a better balance of Sacch to Brett, and we want to kind of push forward with this one, or
100%? Yep. And then I would microscope and just he was taught me to just count cells and kind of be like, oh, it's a 60-40 or it's a 70-30 this direction, or whatever kind of thing, and then just kind of. And then as my fermentations were fitting a certain flavor profile, I was finding that kind of ratio that I wanted. And then just trying to maintain that as much as possible. So we'll play with different grists and stuff like that to kind of rebalance the Saison over the Brett and things like that. But for the most part, it pretty much just lives freely now inside of these three brinks that we haven't really done anything with for 4 years.
Have you ever had it analyzed to know what your kind of Brett versus Sacch yeast mix looks like in there?
We should now. We really should. I never have because I don't know why I never have. Pablo at White Labs keeps telling me to do it. He would love to do it. I don't know why. Stan asked me the same question. I don't know. I guess I don't want to find out there's something in there that I don't want it to be in there and just be like, oh no. I don't know. I guess I just haven't got around to it, or I don't know, but it'd be fun to see for sure.
Flavor wise, do you have any idea what you think might be in there?
It's gonna be super Brux heavy, multiple strains of Bruxes. I've always been a Brux fan across the board, so we definitely use a lot of that. And then I do think that there is some bacteria that's inside of there now. Probably more lacto heavy than anything else. And I don't know which strain. It's definitely more pineapple-y and fruity type of thing. So I don't think it's like Del Brecchi or something. And then I don't know if there's other critters in there. I guess that's why I don't want to find out.
You mentioned adjusting the grist to make it more saison-y. Talk to me, about that kind of principle.
Yeah. So pretty much we just mess with our dextrin ratio, and we'll run like a lighter dextrin grist or malt when we really want to fire off our saison and let our Brett kind of secondary thing. We do pitch high temp. I know there's like a lot of people that do different things, but I believe in life at 30°C. That was a joke me and Bob used to say all the time. So we let ours go in as hot as possible. Free rise above 90, we're not afraid of. We do that all the time. And then if we are looking for a longer Brett development over time, we'll long chain it somehow. So, flakes of some kind or do something similar to that just to give it a little longer chew for the Brett. And and that definitely brings in, for us, a lot more opportunity for the acidity to really peak going in the package when we long chain it.
And so you're kind of manipulating fermentation time and fermentability in order to kind of tweak the levers on these various components in the beer.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Let's talk about hops, because that certainly has another impact there. You mentioned trying to pull in new school hops, and span this hazy IPA world with the farmhouse world. How are you tweaking those hops levers to also affect the kind of fermentation and process of the culture itself?
Yeah, so I mean, hops obviously, if our culture starts developing a strong acid profile right off the bat, the next round will increase our IBUs pretty high. Most of our saisons in general are in the 35 IBU range,
Wow.
almost all the time.
And the culture still functions even at that.
It still does, yeah. It doesn't have a problem with it at all. So we run about 35 IBUs on all our core Solera farmhouse beers. All our heavy hop beers are around the 25-ish IBU range, and just 100% doing New England profile hopping on them. Zero, all late editions, 0 minute editions, a couple pound and a half or so in the kettle, with about a 2 to 3 pound dry hop on them. And what we'll do also is we do biotransferring, because we have open fermenters. It's really hard to dry hop without pressure to help those hops kind of get back into solution or stay in solution.
Right.
So what we'll do is we'll actually do a couple different things. If we have an open conical, we'll actually move it over and dry hop second, or we'll actually add sugar at the time that we dry hop to kind of spark the yeast and the Brett's usually functioning by then, and get it to actually metabolize and biotransfer at that dry hop. So we'll kind of help it out, because sometimes two
so
days.
You're encouraging hops creep.
Yeah. Well,
You're just going to feed the creep.
Yeah. The saying, right? Brett will eat everything eventually. So
right.
We're just like, well, this one's going to wait a little longer before we go to package. But yeah, so we'll do that. So sometimes our culture will be down to one Play-Doh in 72 hours. And that's from a 12 start or something. And you miss that opportunity to do some kind of great dry hop transfer with Citra or something on the Brett. So that's what we'll do. We'll feed sugar, kind of get the yeast back active again, give it some simple activity. Then we dry hop, and the convection activity will then turn the hops around, get it all into solution. And then about 3 days later, we're ready to pull it out and clean it up.
Interesting. I want to talk to you a little bit about funk, but before we do that, ABS Commercial is excited to be a part of today's podcast. ABS is a full brewery outfitter offering brew houses, tanks, keg washers, and small parts. ABS wanted to do something fun for the craft brewing industry and gave away an ABS Keg Viking keg washer live this past December 7th. Congratulations to Lazy Horse Brewing and Winery in Nebraska, who are the new proud owners of a Keg Viking. To make sure you're on the list for future giveaways, go to www.abs-commercial.com. Click on the Keg Viking page and fill out the contact form to stay in the know. Also, Craft Beer and Brewing's All Access subscriptions give you a year of the print and digital editions of the magazine, plus access to our library of video courses, a special deep dive email only for All Access subscribers, premium content, and All Access exclusive merchandise. Subscribers are the first to see every new issue, including our annual Best in Beer issue that's out now. Go to beerandbrewing.com, click on the subscribe button, and join now. So Shawn, one of the kind of components in funk development, especially in Brett beers, is that kind of sulfury aged hops character that Brett seems to metabolize into fun flavors that we all love so much. As you're kind of pushing this New England style of hopping, it seems like you're taking a little bit of a different approach. How do you balance that funk production, within your beer with this kind of brighter, juicier hops character?
I don't know. It just does it. I'm not. Yeah, I don't.
Highly technical answer.
Yeah. Sometimes you just gotta saying we have around here. Just trust in the Brett.
Right.
Yeah. That's really it. We've tried to just play with different techniques, and we've found ways that it hits and develops. And I don't know why, to be honest. We have done aged hops beers. I love blue cheese and funk just as much as any other farmhouse guy out there. Those beers just take a little more time before they're approachable to the market, what we've learned. Whereas, these hoppier beer profiles kind of have been able to cross over people into some of our more exotic style of farmhouse and saison style beers, because it's a mosaic hop or Vic Secret hopped, funky beer.
Man, spoken like a true drug dealer right there.
Yeah,
we're just gonna give them a little taste here. We're gonna move them over to this farmhouse side by giving them some of that juicy hops character that they love. Smart.
100%, man. I'm your vice guy. Yeah.
Let's one of the things that you've done, speaking of like polarizing characters in farmhouse beer, one of the things you've done is jumped on that green bottle train that Jeff Stuffings and Bob and others have been kind of promoting and embracing some of that lightstruck character in your beer. Talk to me a little bit about the kind of idea behind that and how you manage some of that to kind of keep it under control and keep it at the right place. Because certainly when that character goes too far, it can kind of go off of an even more polarizing deep end. I'm not gonna say it's wrong or right. I'm just saying that there are people that may or may not like it.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a polarizing aspect. So just growing up drinking farmhouse beer, everything was a green bottle back in the day. So DuPont,
Yeah.
Terrier.
If you live in
Bellagio.
America, right, you're drinking it that way. Yeah.
Exactly. So I just thought that's the way we did it. And when I started brewing with Bob, that's what he did. And the discussion is always like, is it part of it? Is it not part of it? That kind of thing. And the way I figure is it is part of it because that's how it came to you. So right or wrong or on purpose or not, that skunk flavor it's part of the style. And so we've always been green bottle. We still green bottle to this day, everything besides stouts. Stouts go in a different bottle. But I don't ever want to go away from green bottles personally. I think the nostalgia of it for me just feels like home when I have this green bottle and this Brett case popping out of it. It feels like home. But yeah, controlling it is difficult. So when we package our beers, they immediately go back into
especially since you're talking about putting out 35 IBU farmhouse beers, which clearly have a significant amount of alpha acid, and then going into that kind of green container.
Yeah, no doubt. And our higher hop beers do achieve lightstruck character more rapidly sometimes than we were planning for. So they go into their case boxes pretty much immediately right after they're packaged, sealed off, so they stay dark as they condition. We try to condition as warm and fast as possible as well, so that they're ready to go out and not hopefully going to sit on a shelf for very long and get the UV effect, outside in the market.
Right.
And that's it. So we just try to condition as fast as possible. And immediately store in our case boxes, no outside storage of any kind, or light aging, I guess. Yep.
Right. But now once you put it out on a shelf, you can't, and it goes into that distribution kind of channel, you can't control it. Have you gone out and tasted these that have sat out in typical kind of retail conditions? And how do you feel about those beers when you do that?
The purist in me says, fuck yeah. But, no, so I've always believed, and we always, say that like those styles, especially those styles of beers are, they're aging, they're living, they're supposed to continue to develop in multiple ways. And, that's the guys at Cellar and girls at Cellar out there, they get it. They buy 2 bottles, they age 1, they buy 3, whatever. And they understand that there's a development profile to certain styles of beers. The normal consumer that may be coming across our beer for the first time, that's the fear that I have, is like, it is an off-putting thing. I mean, Heineken gets away with it all the time, but like, an American craft brewery in Greenville, South Carolina, for the first time, someone's having one of our Solera project beers, never having us before, opening it up, and it's just a skunky monkey, can be a turnoff. And so that's my fear, on those things. So we just, with our distributor partnerships, we just really try to be really open and transparent with their pool process, and we consider ourselves a pool brewery, not a push brewery. So we're only pretty much delivering what their like sales reports are saying they're actually selling. So even if they want 80 cases of a hazy IPA, historically they've only sold 30. We're not just going to try to grab the money off of selling those 80 cases to them. Because that's just not good for anybody. It's not good for them to have a product that's out there that goes bad or south, or it's not good for us for brand wise. So we really share continuously with all our distributors. understand exactly what they need, how fast they're going through products, so that it's as fresh as possible, continuously the whole time throughout the whole chain.
Yeah. So ideally, that stuff's just not sitting out on shelves, getting more light struck as you
Yeah.
go.
Every now and then there's a gas station in like New Mexico that'll have a bottle of, we'll see it like on Untapped or something, whatever. It's like, holy crap, we didn't make that beer. They were like 4 years ago. Like, I don't even remember that beer. Yeah. Right.
Let's switch gears and talk about some of the other styles of beer you make. You know, are there any beers that you've been brewing this year, or some kind of trends that you've seen in your consumers that have, for demand around certain styles of beer, that have kind of pushed you to stretch out and try some other new things?
Yeah. I mean, just now wrapping up our production plan for 21 and kind of what that landscape looks like, for us. It it's what it is. It's what the market drives for. But there's the need for more IPAs. We again we have one year round IPA that we do, and then we do a seasonal, a quarterly release of an IPA, and that's been pretty good for us.
A quarterly release of an IPA.
Yeah.
That's an atypical strategy for a brewery of
Yeah.
your size.
Well, again, we're funk first here, so I'm pretty proud that when you come in our brewery, you still get about 60% of funk on our taps. We really try to hammer that home, that's what we're proud of. That's who we are.
Yeah.
But no, the saying that though, we're going to make a little more next year, IPA wise. We do imperial stouts, but we only do them once a year. They come out every November, once a year. Markets and trends are showing that we should be trying to do those a little more often. So, but we have fun with that stuff. We do a farmhouse version. We do a red wine version. So we're staying true to kind of our core principles here as brewers. But yeah, we're gonna have to dabble a little deeper into that kind of market segment as well.
Market trends. That is an interesting one, because certainly there's question marks out there about the kind of viability of, at a commercial and distro level, of that kind of barrel aged stout and kind of specialty beer in general. But you're saying that from what you see, the demand is definitely there for it.
Yeah, and price conscious too.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the other trend that's happening that I'm excited for too, because we've had a huge uptick this year in our Pilsner and our year-round Kolsch, and there's a huge upswing in those, because I think their price point is there and it fits our market. And I do think that there is an effect coming back, a rubber band kind of swinging back the other way now, of beer drinkers, so to say, for lack of a better term, coming back around to beer flavors. But price conscious. So if we're going to put out these imperial stouts, we can't expect to be charging whatever I don't know. I think some people are charging like $30 something for like a 375 or some things like this. Like, I think that's swinging, especially post pandemic, with everyone economically being hurt across the board. So that's a big driver for us too.
That's a weird one with that kind of pricing, because there's the Anchorages and the side projects and the toppling Goliaths, that are certainly in their direct sales, or in the case of Anchorage, sales through Tavor and that kind of channel, that are able to kind of push new tiers. But these are generally limited products that that there is demand for, that sell out quickly, and that kind of limited nature of those seems to drive an additional stomach for those price points. And people, there's that dueling kind of philosophy where people want to experience something special and they want to have a relationship with the brewery that's making that. But I think there is something to what you're saying, whereas if you're putting that out to distributors and it's sitting on a store shelf, that's generally a different experience in terms of price point, and that kind of consumer has a different kind of calculus going on.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I mean, don't get me wrong. If I had the brewery that was as good as the guys you just were mentioning that could drive those kind of tiers, I probably would be still trying to do it. But But I think,
And I don't mean any negative judgment on them.
oh
I
no,
just spent $100 on a bottle of Kentucky Brunch Stout from
yeah,
Toppling Goliath, and I'm happy that there is a world like this where these beers can exist, and I don't think that needs to be the only world of beer that exists. I think beer can, just like wine, exist on this wide spectrum of pricing and tiers, from the top end to a very accessible, common man kind of approach, for beer. And so it's probably a healthy thing that this broad spectrum exists. And it's funny to hear all the beer people kind of like whinge about, I can't believe they're charging this much for a beer. I'm like, hey, if there's a market for it and they can make it,
hey, hate the player, not the game, or whatever it's called. Hate the game, not the player. I kudos to breweries that make that quality of beer and can drive those kind of markets. Just in our home market here, we're not structured as a brewery either to make the small enough quantity that we could sell at that high premium price.
Yeah.
Like for our market here, that's really like about a 3-barrel-ish batch.
Right.
And
right.
we're not structured that way here. So just trying to figure out, and we will have some premium type of level stuff too. That would be like, taproom only type model type stuff like that. But I think as we're kind of, as our awareness of our brand and our brewery is kind of becoming larger, we have to kind of balance those two worlds. And it's just, again, it's our market in South Carolina. There's not a huge release day turnout like you see in Colorado and these other types of places. This area, whatever, just really isn't into that. So you have to figure other ways to do it.
No, fair enough. Well, let's talk about the beers themselves. So, this Empress Rising, barrel aged imperial stout was remarkable, and I love red wine barrel aged stouts primarily because we taste so many bourbon barrel aged stouts, many of which are fantastic. That when a well-made red wine barrel aged stout comes along, it provides a counterpoint, especially in a flight of barrel aged beers where you're tasting things together. Like, this is different, but it's interesting from a flavor perspective. Talk to me a little bit and recipe kind of approach. How are you? Is there any difference in design for your imperial stouts depending on what barrel they go into? Maybe there's not, but is there? What does that kind of look like for you, and how do you adjust for these varying flavor profiles of the barrels that you're using?
Yeah, so we run 3 different imperial stout grists. Empress Rising is probably, that grist profile is probably brewed the most for everything. So all the bourbon barrel and the red wine barrels are the exact same product coming out of the ferment.
Yeah.
So Wolves in the Piano, which is our maple syrup, double yeasted. So we use an American strain and we finish with a Belgian strain. And that imperial stout has a little different grist profile for that beer to carry through. It's not as thick and residual sugar like Empress Rising tends to have. And then if we do a farmhouse version, which we have some that we did in Funk or Brett in barrels as well, we run that pretty much a smaller type of grist because it's going to chew down further to get the ABV you want. And I don't want to put a 12 Plato beer into a barrel and have to clean that shit up for 3 months while it finishes out. So we do change that one.
So you, even with Wolves in the Piano, you said you finish it on a Belgian yeast.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me a little bit about the design process around that and what that does for the flavor and sensory component of the beer.
Yeah, so it's fermented, with a American high gravity yeast. Sometimes we use Scottish for all our IPAs. I really like Scottish yeast. We ferment it, however, till it's about done, and then we'll dump a bunch of maple syrup into the actual fermenter as well. So it's like fermented maple syrup. It's not just like finished super sweet syrupy.
Right.
And then we'll throw in some like high gravity Belgian yeast strains and let them kind of finish off on that syrup and the residual sugar left. And so you get this you kind of get like the molassesy thing from the maple syrup, but then it's like it hits you with like cherryish and the plum Belgian yeast kind of finish out. We will free rise it as well where the Belgian yeast comes in, so it's able to produce some more ester profile. And it's a nice little like fruit cake of a stout. Finishes off around 14% this year was.
Wow.
And it's a little bit of a easier drinking flavor profile than a super sweet Chloe stout like what an Empress Rising can be, depending on what we do with it.
There's been kind of a lot of move within the world, and you know, even within things like imperial stout, there is cyclical trends. I think that that move in different directions. And for the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, we've definitely been moving in this direction of clean coffee, roast, and dark chocolate. Kind of centric flavors, pushing that ester profile to the side, and and providing that kind of edgier um, element in the kind of base stout in order to play against the high residual sweetness. And so it's, but the history of these beers is such that, for much of them, they were made with a more ester forward and dark fruit component, to those beers. Is this just, from your perspective, do you see things moving, or is this just the way that you want to stake out territory for yourself?
Yeah, I think beer is cyclical. Just like you're mentioning, I think that I we make a year-round dry Irish stout, and it's 4.5% roasty, dry. Sometimes tastes like a ashtray. I feel like sometimes, but
That's nice, like
yeah,
these.
yeah, yep.
Yeah.
And it's a big seller, and we appreciate that kind of, I guess, coming back to kind of like these original flavors. I was just literally thinking yesterday that this year, for one of our Imperial Stout releases, I really want to make like an old Rasputin. I mean, holy crap, that beer was incredible back in the day, and
Yeah.
and the flavors it had going on. And I think it's going to come back around. I do.
Crank it up past 100 IBUs and just make it
Man,
like
true,
over the top.
true Russian style. Yeah. Yeah. As far as wolves go, yeah, it's really just about exploration. One of our uh, core principles here is to never stop exploring, and we mean that as individuals, talents that everybody at this company brings to the table. Us as beer drinkers, push yourself to explore other styles of beer. Try a seltzer if you want to, whatever. Like, explore every possible thing. And I know I just opened up the can, but
And I'm going to go there.
yeah, but
Yeah. Yeah.
but explore. So that's kind of
Right.
what Wolves in the
Right.
Piano was hatched from. Is basically
Yeah.
me pushing myself as a brewer, and trying to take something that people were doing and twist it maybe, and hopefully it worked out.
Yeah. So are you making seltzer?
We have not, no.
You haven't yet,
No, we have
but
not.
you're philosophically and conceptually okay with it.
Yeah, hey, if it works, again, knowing your home court, right? I think if it's done well, I mean, that's number one. Is if you're making a quality product, I mean, me personally, I don't know how to say anyways what you do. But yeah, it's if you make a great product and it sells for you, and it's a quality product that you can actually hang your hat on as a craft product, then I mean, go for it. I mean, absolutely. I never thought that we'd be making ridiculously fruited sours. I always thought we'd be able to make these balanced, nuanced, kind of old world sours. But our market says, just like every market almost says now, you need to have these like ridiculously fruited sours going on. Yeah, absolutely. If it works for you and you can do it right, I mean, you should. Why not?
And I guess that speaks to that. There is, as a creative person and also a business owner, you are constantly trying to balance that vision of what you want to create against what the market and your is for it and what your consumers want to drink. Because ultimately, if it was just about your own vision, you just could stay a home brewer and brew exactly what you want for yourself. But if you want to have a business, you need to make things that other people want to drink.
Yeah.
And even among some of those old school classics that we hold up as models on that kind of more niche beer world. Even folks like Cantillon have had to over the years work on and add to their fruit beer portfolio, try new ingredients, change some of their processes to make sure that their beers are still hitting today's consumers in the way that they want to hit them. So even your old school German lager breweries are playing around with more hops and some more contemporary approaches to some of their things in order to kind of create a story and keep people interested. And so, this is the history of beer has never been one that's always stayed in one place. It has always been about brewers responding to drinkers and kind of sharing that pathway forward.
Absolutely. Starting a brewery, I always say, like, yeah, I mean, everyone loves my beer. It's in my garage. It's free. But as soon as you start a brewery, someone's going to be willing to pay $5, $7, $8 a pint or whatever you're charging. I mean, that's literally listening to the things around you. And we understand that as a business, we have to have what we call cash grab beers. And as much as we sit around drinking brand new eyes after work every day, we're probably drinking the most of it in the tap room right now. But yeah, no, it's you have to find that balance of the keeping the cash coming in and then being able to supply the fuel and the resources behind your passion projects and experimental projects.
And you all have definitely still held true to that vision, and the fact that you are making beers that and still putting out there in a very significant number beers that are in that kind of funk first approach does say a lot about sticking to your guns, and that if you do it well, that people will find it and they will continue to buy it from you. We talked about it for a minute on the IPA becoming a bigger part of what the brewery does. When you say bigger, what does bigger look like for you?
Probably more like a monthly release.
Instead of quarterly.
Yep. Yeah.
And I know there's so many brewers listening that they release an IPA once a quarter. That is absolutely insane because we keep 4 on our tap list or 8 on our tap list at any given moment in our tap room.
And remember, we kind of cross that bridge with our funky hoppier styles too. So it's not like, there's plenty of hophead flavors, I guess, or whatever for everybody here. No, we're talking more like the trendier style IPA. We've dabbled before in doing milkshake IPAs and all different things. I don't know if we'd go back there again, to be honest. But a good flavorful, balanced New England kind of style IPA. We do this again rarely. For us, it's a lot, but rarely. We're probably going to have to, monthly next year, put out a smallish 30 case or so can run. Focus on our tap room kind of model on those things and just drive that style for us. We've done pretty well with it, and it's time for us to turn it up a little bit. And in reality is we drink a lot of sour and funky beer. So it's either going to be our Pilsner or a big IPA when we're done with the day. So it's not like we don't want to drink them.
Right. Looking at the next year ahead, what is there something in particular that you are singularly most excited about from a exploration and kind of brewing development process?
So again, it goes back to my funky side for me. We were lucky enough this year with Foeder Crafters. They had this wonderful program many people probably knew about, where you basically pay 50% down and 50% at the end of the pandemic to get a foeder in. And we took advantage of that. We were able to get a new foeder in, and it's a big 50 barrel foeder, and it's named Dolly Parton. My wife named it for us. All our foeders are singing.
Dolly is a hero.
Oh, 100%.
She's a national treasure. Yeah.
All our foeders are named after singer songwriters, and she brought to my attention we didn't have any women names, and then all the stainless are hip hop legends, and there's not a lot of women on that side either. And I was like, damn it, you're right. So her and the rest of the group put together Dolly for us. But so Dolly is a big 50 barrel foeder, and it's basically we're doing a New England single hopped boil process and then pulling out batches and just dry hopping, and we're moving to cans with it. So we'll be doing some farmhouse can conditioning cans this year too. Which is kind of blaspheme. We just got done talking about green bottles, and here I am saying that you're going to see cans of brand new eyes. So Flutter is the name of that program. We've always done single kind of fermentations with these whatever funky hoppy beers. And
Yeah.
so now we're going to run a little more wood program on it, a little more Solera project, or basic Solera draws and refills on top of our Brett strain, and really try to push it with a solid bitterness hop kind of profile. It's gone well. We've got the first pull right now. That's what I was just drinking. It's done well. I'm pretty excited to kind of see where that goes this year for us. And then, I'm excited for it. Actually, I really am excited to see some of our beers go into cans. The flavors, we've done some test batches on them. It is a little different than what we normally get out of our bottle re-fermentations. Can comes out a little differently, but I think it's a good flavor profile that I'm pretty proud of as well. So I'm pretty excited to see that happen. I hope and believe
Are you re-fermenting in cans and carbonating in cans?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it'll be full, just like we do our bottles. It'll be full can condition runs on our farmhouse beers. And I hope and I believe that that's going to probably get our beer into other people's hands that normally wouldn't go and buy a bottle as well. So I'm kind of, as a business owner and as the vision guy here, I'm pretty excited to kind of see that happen.
Yeah. Looking down the road, looking past this pandemic, looking past all the immediate challenges that everyone's trying to work through, what does success look like for Birds Fly South? When will you know that you all have achieved it?
Well, the immediate is pay the next bill. Pay.
Sure.
Yeah, continue paying my rent. That. And, I really, success to us has always been about staying on path, true to vision, and then making a quality product and always being proud of what we put out. And I've always said, like, if we stay at the 3,000 barrel range, then if it's the best product that we can do and we're comfortably selling that at the rate that we need to, then that's probably where we need to stay at. And I find that as a success as a business. If we get pulled and we need to start making more beer, then we're going to welcome that kind of challenge as well, as long as we're maintaining the identity of, quality and being proud of our names on it, from myself to packaging seller and, anybody, bartender serving it. It's part of our company. So for us, that's what success is for me inside this company.
Sure. G&D Chillers is the premier choice for your glycol chilling needs. Set your compass by RAR North Star Pills. Quantaperm's innovative systems offer precise carbonation. Grandstand is your one-stop shop for drinkware, apparel, and promotional items. Sign up at abs-commercial.com for info on future giveaways, and subscribe now to Craft Beer and Brewing to support this very podcast. Shawn, if people want to learn more about Birds Fly South, where do they find you guys in real life and on the interwebs?
Yeah, so BFS Beer, Birds Fly South Beer, is pretty much everything. So website's bfsbeer.com, Instagram, Twitter, it's all at BFS Beer. That's pretty streamlined. We pretty much pump everything out those channels like everyone else does. I'm at Saison Habit. If anyone ever wants to talk Saisons with me, that's me out there in the world.
That is your jam. Well, thanks for talking with me on this episode of the podcast, Shawn. I hope you guys have a good holiday season and can keep weathering this temporary storm. It's nice to see that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, for the broader health crisis, and I hope that our elected officials can help find a light at the end of the tunnel for all the small hospitality-focused businesses that are struggling through this.
Yeah, 100%. And again, I appreciate being on the show, and you can't say that enough. We all just got to stick together, stay strong, leverage each other, help each other as we can to get through this thing. Do what we need to do as people in a population, and you're right. Hopefully, our government finally realizes that they should be leading, not just allowing us to fend for ourselves sometimes on these things. But
sure. That's why we live in society, to help each other through the tough times and mitigate the risk for all of us, so that we can all make it through together. Mm-hmm. Shawn, thanks for talking to me. Cheers.
Yeah, cheers. Be good, everybody. Appreciate it. Thank you.
This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine, for those that love to make and drink great beer. Learn more online or subscribe at beerandbrewing.com, or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew.